Just the final topic. We have a bunch of young professionals tuning into the show to learn from the best, and I'm pretty sure there are many up-and-coming journalists who would love a career like you've been able to have. What are the biggest, reflections, advice, principles you would like to pass down to other people who are trying to make an interesting career? It doesn't have to be a TV presenter, but maybe they want to work with
Mm.
something meaningful and have a fulfilling career. Do you have any principles, advice?
The abiding thing that I've always tried to do is just to cover what I thought was interesting, even if a lot of other people didn't think it was interesting. And a lot of the stuff, in my books or in my coverage that I've done over the years, sometimes I've got stories by talking to people and getting interesting lines that weren't there. Sometimes I've got bona fide scoops. But a lot of the time, the stuff I'm proudest of were topics that other people just didn't spend much time thinking about because they thought they were too boring, that they thought people wouldn't have any interest in them. They didn't bother to look at this data set because it just looked a little too intimidating. Um, I think, there's a lot of material out there for writing and covering amazing topics, provided you're willing to give it a little bit of time and research. And that's basically what I have done for a lot of my career, and it's certainly what I've done with this book. There's very few bits in this book that haven't been covered elsewhere by eminent professors and very smart people, but corralling stuff together in a way that people will be able to digest it and will be able to engage with it. That's what we do as journalists, we're not seeking to be the world's expert at this or that. We're just trying to communicate stuff that we think is important to people. Um, so I think that matters. Focusing on something, finding something that you think is interesting and no one else does, that's a good start, actually, I would say. Because if you're passionate about it, then your passion will come through. And if you're able to just think for a moment while you're doing it about how someone who doesn't understand anything about that topic and who doesn't realize that it's important, how can you get it across to them? What's the elevator pitch or the conversation that you would have in the pub with those people? Thinking about explaining things in that way is a really good start. Um, I think the other thing is, like, I never had like a grand strategy other than wanting to do that, to communicate to people. Um, but journalism, you know, it's 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 a hard it's a hard sector to break into, and it takes time. It takes time to build up a following, and there are plenty of tools you can use, whether it's social media, or blogging platforms or podcasting and so on. But as you know, Christopher, it takes time to build up a following, and that's not always immediately obvious to you. If you're starting off, you just look at people with these uh pre-existing communities and think to yourself, well, I'd like some of that. But it does take time to build it up. So, and it's an investment in your career, but it may take a bit longer than you expect to do that. The landscape of journalism right now is very different to when I started, when it really was quite a bit more conventional, and you didn't really have much. You didn't have many, if any, people coming through blogging. But social media, Substack, all of these things, and YouTube as well, and podcasting are fantastic ways to build up a well of different stories and resources and episodes that you can kind of later look back on with pride. It might just take a bit longer than you expect. And that's why I think it's important all the way along just to follow what you think is interesting. And I think if you do, then you'll also be satisfying your own curiosity along the way. And I promise you that there are definitely lots and lots, because I keep coming across them all the time. Lots of stories in weird nooks of the internet or different sectors, or in politics, that are kind of under focused on, and there are opportunities to tell unique and engaging stories there. So I would encourage all of you to kind of get out there and do more of that.